Hi, welcome back to the English Meeting Room. I'm Hannah, and about 7 years ago, I moved countries and had to conduct a job search and get a job from scratch. Had to send my CV out there, figure it out, and I learned a lot during that process. And I actually ended up working in recruitment and learned so much more during that time about what recruiters are actually looking for, what makes a good CV, and how to really use your CV to get interviews. And in this video today, I'm going to share with you my top tips for CV writing and guide you through the process of writing a CV that will really get you noticed. In this video, we're going to look at the purpose of your CV. What's the point of it? What should you have in mind when you're writing your CV? I'm going to talk about the best style and layout and give you some insider tips of what recruiters really like. We're going to look at the different parts of your CV and do's and don'ts for each section. So your contact details, your professional profile, your core competencies, your work experience, as well as your education and those other bits at the bottom of your CV like languages, hobbies, interests, volunteer experience. I'm going to give you all of my top tips and advice for these sections. And to finish, I'm going to tell you how to send your CV so that it will get read by recruiters and hiring managers and how to really make that impact. So grab a cup of coffee, get a pen and paper. We're going to go through all the ways that you can write a CV that's going to get you noticed and get you those interviews that you deserve. So what is the purpose of your CV? Well, I hate to break it to you, but it's not about you. You might think you don't need to do any research before you write your CV because you know all about you, you're an expert. But that's not what a CV is about. It's not your life history, it's not even about your career objectives or what you want to achieve. I'll tell you what it is about. It's about the employer and their needs. Maybe they need someone to manage their office and get things organized. Perhaps they need somebody to sell their products. Your CV is about convincing the employer that you are the person who can solve those problems for them, that you have the skills and experience that they are looking for. So as you begin writing your CV, the first thing you need to do is understand the jobs that you're applying for, what those companies are really looking for, so that you can include that information in your CV and speak to them and what it is they're interested in. So how are you going to do that? Read through the job descriptions carefully. Pay attention to the key requirements, the key words that they're using. Understand the businesses and what they're looking for. Brainstorm and think about the skills and experience that you have and how it is relevant for those job descriptions. That's going to be the basis of your CV, and that's the information that you are going to want to really highlight to employers. So let's talk style and layout. What is the best way to present this information to a recruiter or hiring manager? Well, there's been a big trend recently of CVs that have very complicated layouts, sidebars, graphs, images. But let me tell you, that is not what works. You see, people that look at CVs all day want to just see a CV and be able to quickly find the information they're looking for. Also, most CVs aren't even looked at by people first, but by computer software called applicant tracking systems. And this software will just be scanning your CV for text. It's not looking at all of those fancy elements you've put in it. And in fact, it can make it harder for it to find the information on your CV. So what are my top tips for style and layout? Number 1, choose one font, make it professional and easy to read, such as Times New Roman or Arial. Number 2, keep the text black with a white background. And number 3, don't add any logos, images, or graphics. Just text on your CV. So that's style and layout. Now we're going to look at each section of your CV and what you should include. Now, of course, the first section of your CV is your name and contact details. They should be right at the top and easy to find. And my top tips are this. 1. Make your name big and bold so that it stands out and it's clear who you are. 2. Pick one telephone number, usually your mobile number, and include the country code if you're applying outside of your home country. 3. Your email address. Make sure it's professional. Don't use any funny email address that you had when you were younger. And lastly, your location. You don't need to add your full mailing address. No one is sending you post. Just include the city that you are based in, or perhaps the city that you are going to be based in where you want to work. That way recruiters are more likely to contact you. The next and most important section of your CV is your professional profile. This is where you are going to summarize your experience. This is going to be one of the first things the recruiter reads, and it's really important that you grab their attention right there and then. This is such an important part of your CV. So much so that I've written an ebook that goes into lots of detail on how to structure this in a way that is going to get you noticed. But in this video, I just want to share my top 2 tips. Number 1, do not write a career objective. Do not tell them why you want the job or what kind of job you are looking for. Instead, tell them why they should hire you. This should be your sales pitch. Focus on that. Secondly, use my 3 tense technique. That is, number 1, tell them who you are now, the present. 2, tell them what you have achieved, the past. And 3, tell them what you are going to do for their company, the future. By covering these points, you will be sure to grab their attention. As I said, this is the most important part of your CV. Get this wrong and the recruiter might not even read the rest of your CV. But get it right and you stand a good chance of being selected for interview. So as I said, I've written an ebook. It will talk you through step by step, sentence by sentence, how to write this very important section. I'll link it in the comments below, so do make sure to check it out. So you've got your name and contact details, followed by professional profile. What's next? Well, the most common thing to put next is a core competencies or key skills section. This is where you're going to highlight all of the information in your CV and draw out the most transferable and relevant skills for the job you're applying for. And the best way to do this is with maybe 5 bullet points of your key skills. And for each one, make sure you demonstrate it. So instead of just writing skilled negotiator, write skilled negotiator closed $2 million worth of deals last year. You then prove that what you have said is true and it has much more impact. After that, it's the all-important work experience section. This is where you're going to list your career history. And my first tip is to write it in reverse chronological order. That means your most recent experience is going to be first. That is what is most relevant. My second tip is to write it in the past tense. Focus on things you have done in your role, not in your responsibilities. Sentences that are talking about things that have happened and their results have much more impact than sentences that just talk about what you are responsible for. The next section of your CV is your education. And the important thing about this is actually where you place it on your CV. So I have done a video which I'll link, which goes into much more detail on this. But as a general rule, you want to consider what information is going to get you the job. Remember, Your CV is a sales tool. It's all about creating your personal brand and selling and marketing you to the employer. So with your education, if that's the most important thing, maybe you've just finished university, then that can actually go higher up your CV, above your work experience. But if you've been working for a long time, it might not be that relevant anymore. So you can put it underneath your work experience. Second tip to consider is how much information to include in your education. And again, just evaluate what is really relevant. So for fresh graduates, you might include a lot of detail. For those working for longer, you can keep this section quite brief. Space on your CV is valuable, so don't use it up with stuff that's not going to be interesting or relevant for the job you're applying for. Also, it's worth only including the last 2 stages of your education. Anything more historic is just that. It's history and it's rarely relevant for your job. So what about hobbies, interests, volunteer experience? Do you need to add all of that onto your CV? Again, it depends. Is it going to enhance your application? Remember, you need to think about everything you write on your CV and whether it is selling you to the employer, whether it's relevant for the job you're applying for. So if you have some interesting hobbies that are related to that job, perhaps you enjoy painting and you're applying for a creative job, well then it's quite interesting and relevant. But if you just enjoy watching Netflix and going out with friends, don't bother adding it. It's not really going to enhance your application. The same is true for volunteer experience. Especially for fresh graduates, this can be a great way to demonstrate some skills and initiative on your part. But if you've been working for a long time, it might not be that relevant anymore for jobs you're applying for. As a general rule, if it enhances your chances, include it. If it's going to distract, leave it off. It is not mandatory to have hobbies, interests, volunteer experience on your CV. I just want to touch briefly on another common thing that people include on CVs, which is personal details. Should you include them? Well, the reality is it will depend on the region that you're applying for. So make sure you check with a recruiter base there on what personal information is required. But generally, things like languages can be useful to include, so do add that. Sometimes driver's license is relevant if you are going to be traveling for your job. And often very personal information such as age, marital status, nationality is not needed. Let's just talk about 2 things that shouldn't be included, that take up space. Firstly, do not write curriculum vitae or CV at the top of your CV. It's obvious what the document is, and this takes up valuable space. It's not needed. Secondly, don't write references available upon request at the bottom. Again, it's obvious. Why take up valuable space on your CV with a sentence like that? So you've created a beautiful CV that shows all of your amazing skills and accomplishments. But now you need to get it read. If no one reads it, it is no use whatsoever. So how are you going to do that? Well, let me share with you my top 4 tips. Tip number 1 for getting your CV read. Send it to the right people. Your CV in the wrong inbox is not going to get you anywhere. You need to identify the recruiters that hire in your industry. You need to identify the HR managers at the companies that you're applying for. You need to find the job descriptions that really match your skills and experience and apply for those jobs. If you just hit apply to everything, it's not going to get read by anybody. Here's my second tip for getting your CV read. Once you've identified the right people, make sure you take time over the application and your approach. Sending a personalized email that explains why they should review your CV, why you're the right candidate for the role, can do so much to enhance your application. After all, that is your real first impression. My third tip for getting your CV read is to focus your attention on the most important information and put it at the top of your CV. So the most important information is the most relevant information. So if the job advert asks that you are ACCA qualified, then include this in your opening statement. For example, I am an ACCA qualified accountant with 5 years experience. Remember, recruiters are not necessarily going to read all the way through your CV, so keep it concise, keep the most relevant information at the top, and don't make your CV too long. And my final point for making sure your CV gets read is to send it in the right format. Do not fall at this final hurdle. The best format for sending your CV is a Microsoft Word document. This is universally recognized by recruiters, companies, and most importantly, by applicant tracking systems. This software that's going to read through your CV. Sending your CV as a PDF or pages might result in it getting jumbled or the information not being extracted properly. So make sure you get that right. Remember, your CV is a sales document. It is what is going to market you to prospective employers. So take the time to really check it through thoroughly. Make sure that there are no silly mistakes on there. It's always good to get a second opinion as well, be that a friend or a professional CV writer, just to make sure that it is perfect. This is what is representing you to your future employer. So I hope you found this video really helpful. As I said, I'll put lots of links below of other resources, and I really wish you all the best with your job search.